I accidentally kissed my archenemy. He's a top-tier alpha. I'm an omega pretending to be a beta. I've kept up the act for years just to crush that alpha bastard once and for all until one day. My heat hit unexpectedly, eyes red, he pinned me to the bed and growled, "You lied to me. Then your punishment is to be marked by me for life." My roommate George wailed from the side, "You'd got together." What about me? It all started after class. The moment I stepped out of the classroom, I slammed headfirst into someone's chest, and worse. We accidentally kissed. His pheromones were so aggressive that my knees instantly went weak. Alpha scent, top-tier kind, he jolted like he'd been electrocuted, and shoved me away. "Cameron Cano, are you out of your damn mind?" The voice was all too familiar. I looked up and locked eyes with a stunned gaze. Damn, it was my archenemy Paulina. He wiped his lips, the tips of his ears tinged red. Seriously? It was just a kiss, but his pheromones were reacting like I trespassed on his territory. That cedar scent, sharp and domineering, threw my heartbeat out of rhythm and made my glands tingle. I almost gave myself away, and come on, it was just a bump. Even a temporary mark would have been more intimate than that. Why such a dramatic reaction? Hands in my pockets, I licked my lips casually. My grandfather's long dead. Nothing left to f***ck. Feeling wrong, fine, I'll let you kiss me back. I was certain that this ever-composed top alpha would scoff and walk away instead. He stared at my lips, his eyes darkening, his Adam's apple bobbed once. Then after just a 2-second pause, he threw down his backpack and slammed me against the wall without a word, lowering his head to bite my lips. He'd lost his mind. This wasn't a kiss, it was a feral, pheromone-fueled act of revenge. His burning hot hands locked around the back of my head, refusing to let me dodge. He forced my mouth open and barged right in. I was completely stunned. He was actually serious. I just taunted him out of habit. How did he lose control so fast? He was biting like a freaking rabid dog. His pheromones engulfed me completely. A shiver born from a mega instinct crawled straight up my spine. Sure, campus couples were everywhere these days, boys with girls, girls with girls, boys with boys. Nothing shocking, but the two of us, we weren't anything. We were rivals, and I was still hiding the fact that I was an omega. In broad daylight, a beta and an alpha making out in front of the classroom like this was absolutely ridiculous. I tried to push him away, but couldn't. The alpha's pheromones formed a natural suppression field at this range. Forget it. Let's call this a real-life upgrade to my first kiss training. With a mental sigh, I gave up struggling. As an omega determined to crush every alpha out there, I had to claw back some dominance. So, one hand hooked around his neck to deepen the kiss, and the other slipped right into the waistband of his boxers. It was a hot summer day. His body was sweaty and burning. Damn, his muscle lines were sharp and his ass was firm. I gave it a rough squeeze. The texture was unreal. Just moments ago, he was like a raging T-Rex. Now, he froze entirely. He pulled away. His lips were slightly swollen, breathing ragged. Eyes stormy with a mess of emotions. He yanked my hand out of his pants, hard enough that my wrist ached. "Cameron, you're so damn loose." Even his previously aggressive pheromones had calmed down quite a bit. I used the chance to push him away, adjusted the strap of my backpack, and gave him a sit-along glance. Coward, huh? Trying to fight me. So much for a top alpha. Watching him stand there frozen, face full of mixed feelings, I felt a little of the frustration that had been simmering in me finally dissipate. I ignored him, bumped his shoulder on purpose as I walked past, and raised my middle finger without even turning around. Behind me, he growled, "Cameron, just you wait." I acted like I didn't hear it and quickened my pace. Time to get home. Dinner was waiting. Braised pork ribs, cola wings, fish fragrant shredded pork, old hen soup, all more interesting than a deranged mud alpha. My entanglement with Paul goes all the way back to our toddler days, running around in split bottom pants. We were born the same year. He's older by 2 months. His house was right across from mine. Our parents were so close. It was like they wore the same pair of pants. Holidays together, vacations together, mahjong games together, every outing, every trip always in a group. They used to joke about arranging a marriage between us. But since we were both boys, his parents ended up calling me their godson, and my parents, they called him their god-grandson. That's right, I'm his dad. We've never gotten along from childhood. Our families compared us to each other constantly. The adults were friendly, but behind the scenes, it was all low-key rivalry, and I mean that in the most annoying way possible. At my house, our dinner table culture boiled down to one theme. You can't just eat. You also have to look at Paul. Look at Paul, first prize in the math competition again. Look at Paul. Top of the entire year in finals. I heard that crap so much. My ears developed calluses all through high school. Did I ever slack off? Never. I burned the midnight oil, Forced myself to study even in my dreams. Dreamt of mock exams every night, and still, no matter how hard I tried, I was always second place. It nearly gave me an identity crisis. To make things worse, we were assigned as desk partners, the combined good intentions of our parents and the homeroom teacher, all under the guise of mutual improvement. Eventually, I got so bored, I started secretly observing Paul. Lately, the guy had been spacing out in class, resting his chin on his hand, staring out the window. After class, he'd read books totally unrelated to school sometimes. He'd stare at a page and smile like an idiot. He even buried his face in a stack of books. Cheeks flushed red. One break between classes, I pretended to nap at my desk and peeked through my lashes just in time to catch him shoving a book into his drawer. I caught a flash of the golden embossed title before the cover snapped shut. The Alpha's Ultimate Conquest. Next to it, How to Drive Your Omega Crazy in Love, huh? So the top Alpha honor student was secretly into trashy romance pulp? My heart soared. I thought I finally had a shot at beating him. But guess what? The next exam he was still first. I stared at the results sheet, drowning in self-doubt. So all my effort meant nothing in the face of raw talent. He read softcore smut and slacked off in class and still beat me. He must have been secretly grinding through practice tests at home. To keep up the effortless genius act, to investigate the enemy more closely, I devised a plan. One weekend night, I showered, hugged my pillow, and knocked on his door across the hall. The door opened. Paul was shirtless, his hair damp, clearly just out of the shower. Water droplets trailed down the contours of his muscles. When he saw me, he froze for a second, then slammed the door shut with a loud bang. A few seconds later, the door reopened. He had thrown on a loose t-shirt. What was the point? We'd seen everything growing up: swimming, bathing. What hadn't we already seen? His parents, upon spotting me, welcomed me like I was their long-lost son. They brought out fruit and snacks, beaming as they ushered us into Paul's room. "You two study hard now. Don't stay up too late, okay? Sleep early." Their eyes flicked between us, filled with a thinly veiled anticipation. I flashed my most well-behaved smile. "Got it, Annie." The door clicked shut. I immediately took over half his desk, munching on strawberries as I stared at him. His hair was fluffy, side profile clean and fair, fingers long and steady as he gripped his pen. That level of focus was something else from the moment I entered the room. He hadn't said a single word, just head down, solving problem sets one after another. That was his third set already. No wonder. He was secretly grinding at home, trying to outscore me. By midnight, I couldn't keep my eyes open anymore. Add to that the soft wafting scent of cedarwood in the room, like premium sleeping pills to an Omega. Like me, I kicked off my slippers and climbed into his bed. "I'm going to sleep. You still not tired?" He didn't even look up, his pen scribbling fast. "You go ahead. Seriously. How does he have this much energy? Like he's been injected with pure caffeine." I accepted my fate, lay down, and pulled the blanket over me. But no matter how I tossed and turned, I couldn't sleep. A strange, nagging guilt simmered inside me. The top of our grade was still burning the midnight oil, and here I was, the perpetual runner-up, already calling it a night. Not to mention, this room was steeped in the scent of a top Alpha's pheromones. My glands were heating up, my heart unsettled. I threw the blanket off and sat up. "Paul, if you don't sleep, I can't either." His pen paused mid-stroke. He stood, and his gaze swept across my exposed thighs. "I'm going to the bathroom." He stepped out and didn't return for quite a while. They say people who stay up late regularly are at higher risk of sudden death. Even though he's an Alpha with high endurance, I couldn't help but worry a little, mainly because if he really dropped dead, who would I compete with that thought? I shuffled into my slippers and went looking for him. Light glowed faintly behind the frosted glass bathroom door. Just as I reached it, I heard restrained panting from inside, mixed with an overwhelming surge of cedar pheromones. Much stronger than before. My cheeks flushed hot. I cursed under my breath and rushed back to the room. And to think I'd been worried about him. Eventually, he returned, carrying the cool scent of post-shower water. He climbed into the other side of the bed like nothing had happened, one bed to blankets. The air conditioner hummed quietly in the middle of the night. Half asleep, I vaguely felt something warm and damp brushing against my ankle and calf. When I woke up in the morning, Paul was hugging my left foot in his arms. His face was pressed against the top of my foot, sleeping soundly like a peaceful baby. I stared at him in silence for 3 seconds, then raised my right foot and kicked him right in that face adored by countless Omegas. Why was I even thinking about these dusty old memories? Food. Food was far more important. I was happily digging into a table full of delicious dishes, especially going all out on the braised pork ribs. Knock, knock, knock. Someone knocked at the door. My mom, Jenna, beamed as she went to answer it. The moment she opened the door, Laughter echoed down the hallway. Paul, come in. Have dinner with us. The pork rib on my chopsticks fell back into my bowl. This guy again. Thanks, Annie. My parents are working overtime tonight. I was just wondering where I could grab a meal. A bright, familiar voice came from outside. You've got to be kidding me. Freeloader. Shameless. The moment my dad Norman heard it was Paul, he practically jumped out of his seat like a low-level government official welcoming a state leader. Paul's. Here, come, have a seat. Cameron, scoot over. There was an empty chair right next to mine at the long rectangular table, watching Jenna and Norman fawn over him like he was royalty. I took a deep breath, picked up my bowl, and reluctantly dragged my chair half a meter to the side to draw the line. Paul, make yourself at home. Eat whatever you like. Just treat this like your own place. Jenna kept sneaking glances at his bowl, practically ready to serve him food herself. Thank you, Annie. Paul smiled with all the warmth and courtesy of a model gentleman, and then I watched in horror as he calmly picked up the glistening drumstick from right in front of me. Then the crispy yellow croaker, then the garlic shrimp. I stared at his bowl, rice untouched. Entire bowl stacked with side dishes. I was notoriously protective of food. This could not stand. I picked up the plate of my favorite garlic ribs and dumped a third of it into my own bowl. Under the table, my mom stomped hard on my foot, her eyes shooting frantic signals. I played dumb, rubbing my ankle, then turned to Paul with a tight, forced smile. Don't hold back. Eat all you want. And then dumped the plate of cola chicken wings into my bowl too. Cameron, my mom hissed through clenched teeth. There are plenty of other dishes, aren't there? I said righteously. He's not even into meat. It's fine, Annie. Paul spoke up just in time and picked up a piece of carrot. Jenna instantly entered praise mode, turning the fire on me instead. Look at Paul, so polite, so considerate. Doesn't even complain about the food. Polite, considerate, not picky, yeah. Right, all an act. I'd long discovered he hates carrots, just never shows it. How opportunity. I raised the friendliest smile I could muster and kept piling carrots onto his plate. From the stir-fried carrot and pork dish, all carrots, no pork. Come on, Paul, eat more carrots. Good for your eyes, full of vitamin A. More and more. I built a little carrot mountain on his plate. The dog kept his perfect smile. Thank you, Cameron. You should have some too. He picked up a generous helping and dumped it into my bowl. We were now in an all-out food war, while my parents turned to the kitchen to get soup. Paul swiftly grabbed a large piece of carrot, one with a slab of fatty pork still clinging to it, and shoved it into my mouth. MMPH. I stared at him wide-eyed. He looked so concerned. Careful, don't choke. I spit it back into his bowl. I thought he'd recoil in disgust, but no. Paul merely paused. Then, without a change in expression, picked up a spoon and scooped the spit-covered carrot and rice into his mouth, chewed slowly and deliberately, then looked up, met my stunned gaze and smirked. I don't mind. What the hell, he actually swallowed it. Freak. I crossed my arms and eyed him up and down. You must be exhausted from all this acting, huh, mister? Perfect. He picked up a napkin and wiped his mouth slowly, leisurely. Not as much as you. Throwing yourself at your archenemy like that, hands. And all, my ears turned red. That was an accident. But you overreacted so hard. People might actually believe a beta like me marked you. Top tier alpha. That's your self-control. He paused mid-wipe, then looked up. Those dark eyes suddenly turned stormy. A surge of aggressive pheromones surged toward me like a tidal wave. My knees buckled. My glands started to heat up again. No, not. Again, he put down the napkin. Cameron, you seem to have a serious misunderstanding about me. What misunderstanding? You're just a pretentious, two-faced fake genius who secretly studies his ass off while reading trashy romance novels and fantasizing about omegas. Paul's pupils contracted slightly, but then he actually smiled. Sounds like you've been paying a lot of attention to me. Don't flatter yourself. Who's been watching you? Then how do you even know what kind of books I read? He leaned closer, cedarwood pheromones brushing faintly against the back of my neck, under the table. His foot slid over hot and firm, pressing tightly against mine. Cameron, your heart's beating fast. I jerked back, scraping my chair across the floor with a loud screech. Soup's ready. My mom came out of the kitchen holding a bowl of chicken soup. Paul immediately stood up, his face calm. Let me help you, Annie. He took the bowl naturally and placed it gently in the center of the table. This soup smells amazing. I kept my head down, sipping silently, not daring to look at him. Paul, on the other hand, acted completely at ease, chatting effortlessly with my parents about school, competitions, and recent updates. His manners were flawless, his tone warm and appropriate. My parents were eating it up, laughing nonstop. Finally, after surviving dinner, I dropped my chopsticks and made a break for my room. But then my dad spoke up. Cameron, Go walk Paul out, walk him out. He lives right across the hall, it's literally 2 steps. I muttered, you brat. One glare from my mom, and I instantly caved. Paul was already standing by the door, giving a polite smile. No need to trouble yourselves, thank you again for dinner, Uncle Annie. I dragged myself reluctantly to the door, eager to get rid of this living Buddha. The sensor light in the hallway was dim. He bent down to tie his shoelaces, and when he stood up, that fresh cedar scent wrapped around me again stronger than it had been at the dinner table. I held my breath and reached for the door handle. Suddenly, a warm hand wrapped around my wrist. Paul's fingers were long and strong. I couldn't shake him off. What do you want? I snapped, looking up at him. His thumb pressed lightly but precisely against the most sensitive spot on the inside of my wrist. That spot, close to a major artery, was also where omega glands were densely concentrated. A jolt of tingling electricity shot up my spine, surging straight to the back of my neck where my main gland was. A muffled sound slipped from my throat. My legs went weak. I nearly collapsed, only for him to catch me around the waist. My inhibitor. I got into relaxed at home and forgot to reapply it. You're sent. He leaned in close, nose grazing the side of my neck. He inhaled deeply, his breath growing heavier. So sweet, damn. Sweetness was a signature trait of omega pheromones. Asterisk panic seized me. Let go. I struggled. But my glands were already overstimulated, my whole body soft and unresponsive. He didn't let go. Instead, he pulled me tighter into his arms. Paul, my scalp tingled. I didn't dare raise my voice, afraid my parents might hear. Damn, what did I do? He asked back. Calm as ever. You're the one who started this. When? He interrupted. Outside the classroom, I hissed. You're the one who kissed me back, and later you're the one who touched me first. His breath grew heavier. The hand on my waist began to drift lower. And that makes it different. I was so angry I was seeing stars, humiliated and furious by how my body was reacting. With him pressing in like this, using his pheromones to suppress me, getting so close, the omega instinct in me shivered, melted, and to my shame, even ached. My glands were scorching hot. A soft, fruity sweet scent began to rise, tangling with the intensity of a cedar. What's the difference, Cameron? Tell me, really, Cameron. Paul's still here. Jenna's voice rang from inside, footsteps growing nearer. My soul nearly left my body. With everything I had, I shoved him away. Asterisk this time. He let go. I stumbled back, slamming into the cold steel security door, gasping for air. Paul quickly composed himself. Annie, I'm heading back now. Okay, come by again soon. My mom stepped to the doorway, glancing between my flushed, breathless face and Paul's calm, composed expression. Her gaze turned curious, but she didn't ask. I clutched the back of my neck, still burning hot. What just happened was completely outside anything I could have anticipated. That feeling, it wasn't just physical contact, it felt like a brief entanglement of pheromones. Maybe it was because I'd been single too long, or maybe because I was an omega who'd been hiding my identity for years. Either way, being that close to a top-tier alpha, my reaction had been far too intense. That guy, messy black hair, sharp features, usually calm and composed, but his pheromones strong, cold, wild. Yeah, I could see why omegas lost their minds over him. I slapped myself across the face without thinking. Cameron, snap out of it. You're an omega who's supposed to crush alphas underfoot, not one who gets swept away by a few molecules of pheromone. If this kept up, next time it wouldn't stop at kissing and a little groping. If even the inhibitor couldn't hold back my instinctual response, then I'd be completely screwed. In the living room, my parents were chatting. I calmed my racing heartbeat, slid onto the sofa, and pretended to watch TV though my ears were on high alert. Norman, Paul just won the national scholarship again. Top prize from the Alpha Academy. He's the only one. My dad was full of admiration. Like Paul was his actual son. Really? That's incredible, Jenna gasped on cue. Then turned toward me, voice light as a feather. Sweetheart, look. At that, maybe you could bring home a scholarship too. Even just a school-level one. I put down the remote. Dad, Mom, why don't you just adopt Paul as your real son? I'm happy to step down from now on. He can be the crown prince, and I'll just be the humble foot-washing servant. My mom choked on her tea. Goodness, this child. He's so stressed he's starting to talk nonsense. Norman, however, sat upright, his gaze burning with passion. Son, your old man believes in you. Even though you're an omega, you're not inferior to any alpha. You can do it. Dad, did that confidence come directly from God? Do you even know what a university is? It's a battleground for demigods. A slaughterhouse where geniuses clash and only the strongest survive. Everywhere you look, it's elite after elite, top-tier alphas whose pheromones could be registered as weapons. Betas and omegas with IQs off the charts and once-in-a-century talents. They may look ordinary, but every single one of them is terrifying. For someone like me, a struggling nobody who has to disguise himself as a beta just to get through school, without incident maintaining even a mid-high rank at a university, takes every last ounce of strength I have. Sleep in 1 minute later, and you won't even get a seat near the wall in the library or study hall. Every exam is a bloodbath. On a 100-point test, score a 95. Congrats. You're officially at the bottom of the class, after a year soaking in the atmosphere of a university. I've learned the art of strategic surrender. It's not that I'm lazy. I just faced reality and chose to go easy on myself. As for Paul, he's a monster, relentless, blazing forward, chasing the top like his life depends on it. He's terrifying. Back in high school, the gap between us was barely noticeable. He was always first. I was second, still within reach. Still gave me hope. But now in college it's like he broke every seal, soared miles ahead, and transformed into some legendary figure. And me? I'm left to gaze upward from the general studies department in awe. Worse, I live in constant anxiety, terrified someone, especially him, will discover I'm secretly an omega. Because that would lead to disaster, like being forced to become someone's property. Even my classmates occasionally gather round to gossip. Cameron, is it true you know Paul from the Alpha Academy? Was he always this intense back in high school? All I can do is sigh deeply. Intense? He's not just intense, he is the pinnacle of intensity, a tireless, turbocharged overachiever. Honestly, being an unambitious, happy little foodie wouldn't be so bad. At least I'd be well-fed and worry-free. But in reality, I can't even have that peace anymore. Every weekend I come home, I bump into Paul. Every time he messes with my head. If I had known, I would have chosen that distant university across the CH University. Preferably one so far I couldn't even come home once a semester. So far that even pheromones wouldn't travel that distance. Regret, so much regret. And it was all his fault. The day we filled out college applications, that sweltering computer lab, he sat right beside me. Eyes falling on the code I was about to input. A university, he said. The competition there, especially between alphas and omegas, is nothing like high school. Cameron, are you sure you want to apply? His tone was calm, every word questioning my ability. Everyone knew a university was one of the top institutions in the country, and a gathering ground for elite alphas and omegas. Our test scores had just come out. He ranked top 10 in the province. I was somewhere in the top 30. I was already fuming inside, and his comment lit the match. My fingers flew across the keyboard. I didn't even glance at other options. I slammed a university into my first choice. I refused to let him look down on me. After submitting, we stepped out of the computer lab. A wave of summer heat hit my face. I marched ahead, trying to shake off the irritation. But he followed me, all the way until we reached that quiet alley near home. There was no one around, just the screech of cicadas. His cedarwood scent drifted faintly through the hot breeze. You really can't bear to be apart from me, huh? His voice was low. I stopped, spun around, stormed up to him, grabbed him by the collar, and shoved him against the wall. He froze for a second. His long lashes trembled slightly. The alley was dim. I couldn't read the expression in his deep eyes. I placed one hand on the wall beside his head, smirking. That's right, I couldn't bear it. What are you going to do about it, my dear desk partner? All through high school, I'd had enough of losing. College would be my new battlefield. Screw this whole biological dominance crap. I was going to shatter it. Paul turned his head, ears tinged with pink. Cameron, don't tell me you like me. What? Did I just hallucinate? Staring at his slightly flushed yet serious face, I squinted, grinding my teeth. What the hell? Aside from aiming for first place, what other junk is stuffed inside that head of his? How can someone be this narcissistic? Like him, I'd sooner enjoy watching him drown in exam papers, a top-tier alpha, and yet somehow a hopeless romantic. Seeing me at a loss for words, a hint of amusement flickered in his eyes. Instead of retreating, he pressed in. You don't like me? Then why insist on choosing the same university? I let out a laugh, half from rage, let go of his collar, and grabbed his cheeks, instead pulling hard, glaring right at him. Listen up, Paul. There's only one reason I picked a university, and that's because I refuse to lose to you. I don't want to be second place for the rest of my life. Got it? He blinked, then let out a low laugh, cocky, very alpha. You'll lose, not a chance. He suddenly leaned in, hot breath brushed past my lips. His pheromones turned sharp and aggressive. You will. We were to close enough that I could see my flustered reflection in his dark eyes. I stared at his lips, so close, my throat tightened. My heart was thudding violently, furiously. Like it had lost its mind, the glands on the back of my neck began to warm. I'd been cursed. My brain flashed with shameful thoughts. His lips looked biteable. And my glands, they were craving something. Just as the tension threatened to explode, he reached out and covered my face with his hand, pushing me back and putting space between us again. The charged atmosphere instantly broke. He returned to his usual calm, adjusting the collar I'd wrinkled. You're still way behind, loser, leaving that smug remark behind. He stuffed his hands in his pockets and walked away, his back lit by the alley's dim glow. Looking unbearably cocky, rage surged in my chest. Paul, you son of a... I launched myself forward, jumped on his back, locked my arms around his neck, and went in for a full-body takedown. In the alley, pheromones clashed, fists flew, curses echoed. By the time we were both battered and bruised, our fuming homeroom teacher had arrived, dragging us away, one in each hand like stray dogs. The day we received our admission letters from a university, both families practically lost their minds with joy. They booked a whole banquet hall, 10 full tables bustling with people and celebration. To the unknowing eye, it probably looked like an AO engagement party. Thankfully, the sign at the entrance read, "Congratulations to Paul and Cameron on their admission to a university." At least, that clarified things a little. Silently, I walked over and nudged my nameplate a bit further to the side. Resting my chin on my hand, I examined the sign. Left side, Paul. Right side, Cameron, huh? Why did it look more and more like a pair of guardian deities posted at the gate? And what the hell was this horizontal banner? Cosmic Cameron. That forced CP name combo made me snort out loud. What's so funny? A chuckle drifted in from beside me, along with a faint cedarwood scent. Even without turning around, I knew it was Paul. My smile vanished instantly. We didn't get along, never had. None of your damn business. Paul was dressed unusually formally today, white shirt, black slacks, tall and lean, looking annoyingly like a proper gentleman. Instead of getting angry, he leaned in a little and asked in a low voice, "We're giving speeches later. You want to go first, or should I?" Speeches? I blinked. Wait, what speeches? No one told me anything. We're just here to eat. Why the public execution? Is there no justice left in this world? Paul raised an eyebrow. What's wrong? Getting scared. You know the audience is full of alpha, omega, and beta elders, right? Scared. Huh. There's no such word in my dictionary, especially not when it comes to Paul. Do you even need to ask? Of course I'll go first. Lose the argument. Not the presents. Perfect, he said smoothly, pulling out a mic from behind his back like he'd been waiting for that. Oh no, my dearest family. Clutching the mic, I marched stiffly onto the stage. 10 tables worth of people instantly put down their chopsticks and looked up in unison. The mix of pheromones in the air made me, as an omega, feel physiologically uncomfortable. My glands tightened. My mom was the first to stand up, fists clenched at her chest, eyes sparkling. She shouted at full volume, "Go, baby, you're the best." A wave of applause followed. My dad looked misty-eyed, pride practically pouring from every pore. Paul stood lazily at the back, arms crossed, leaning against a pillar. He was watching me with an amused glint, clearly waiting for me to crash and burn. What do I even say? I hadn't prepared a damn thing. I could only wing it, bland, half-hearted words, totally soulless. The core message boiled down to this: Cameron, didn't rely on biology, just hard work, and still made it into a university. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see Paul covering his mouth, shoulders shaking suspiciously. He was laughing. What the hell was so funny? I got even more tongue-tied, my face burning. Fine. When he gets on stage later, I'm going to laugh so loud he'll hear it in his dreams. I finished with a bow and a muttered, "Thank you." The audience clapped thunderously. Stepping down, I shoved the scorching mic into Paul's arms. "Your turn." "Thanks." He accepted the mic, and as he did, his fingertips brushed the back of my hand. It was like an electric jolt. I instantly pulled back, palm sweating. He seemed caught off guard by my dramatic reaction, and his expression turned unreadable. I scowled. "What the hell were you laughing at just now?" "I wasn't." He looked completely innocent. "Oscar-worthy. I saw you." He leaned in slightly, warm breath grazing my ear, and chuckled. "Were you watching me that entire time during your speech?" My heart started pounding again, and even my pheromones wobbled. "Don't flatter yourself." I shoved him away and stormed off, finding a quiet corner to sit down, clutching my chest. This feeling, it had to be from poor sleep last night, and the complicated pheromone mix in the room. Yes, that's all. I leaned on my hand and watched as he took the stage. His voice was clear, his logic impeccable. He improvised with ease, even engaging with the elders in the audience. They laughed and applauded frequently. Every now and then, His eyes wandered to the corner where I sat, and in that gaze, besides the usual smugness, there was something else I couldn't quite decipher. I had to admit, he really did shine when he was on stage. Hey, why aren't you laughing now? My cousin elbowed me with a grin, clearly enjoying the show. TCH, I looked away. Fate must have found it hilarious to toy with me. Because when freshman year started, just my luck, Paul and I were assigned to the same dorm room. Talk about cruel twist of fate. Murphy's Law applied to me with pinpoint precision. The more I feared something, the more likely it was to happen. It was a standard 4-person dorm, bunk beds on top, desks below. Besides Paul and me, our two other roommates were anything but ordinary. One was Martin, a beta from S Province, science prodigy, calm and composed, majoring in mathematics. The guy was a logic machine. The other was George, an alpha who had been directly admitted for winning first place in the National Physics Olympiad. His pheromones smelled like sunlit grass, warm and straightforward. He majored in physics. Martin quickly fell into a whirlwind romance with an Omega from the nearby B University. Apart from class and the occasional sleepover, he was rarely seen in the dorm, which meant that most of the time, it was just me, Paul, and George. The dorm air became a battlefield of clashing scents, sometimes sharp cedar, sometimes burning grass. For secretly pretending to be beta omega like me, it was anything but comfortable. One day, Martin went off again to visit his girlfriend. Paul was out somewhere, and that left just me and George in the room. I had just stepped out of the shower, steam still clinging to my skin. I was only wearing a pair of loose lounge pants, towel in hand as I dried my dripping hair to keep my cover. I always used strong inhibitors and scent blockers. At the moment, the only thing on me was a faint minty body wash. George was wearing headphones, gaming intensely. When he heard me come out, he paused the game, took off his headset, and rolled over in his chair. With one long arm, he slung it casually around my shoulders and leaned in to sniff my neck. "Ho, Cameron, not bad. What body wash are you using? Smells better than some of the Omegas in our department." He grinned. That grassy scent of his spreading like sunlight. My body instinctively weakened. I let out a dry laugh and pried his arm off. "Just regular mint. It's hot, back off." But he didn't let go. His gaze landed on my flushed cheeks and damp lips, and that look, it definitely went beyond what a friendly roommate would give. "I mean it, man. You're seriously good looking, even paler than most Omegas. Kinda tempting." His arm tightened around my neck. His grassy scent grew stronger. My brow furrowed. I was just about to shove him off. Bang. The dorm door slammed open. Paul stood there with his backpack, damp hair clinging to his forehead like he'd just finished a run. His gaze dropped to George's arm wrapped around my shoulders, then slowly lifted to my flushed face. The cedarwood scent exploded into the room, frigid, dominating, aggressive. It surged like a tidal wave straight at George. George's arm around my shoulders suddenly stiffened. The smile on his face vanished in an instant. But he didn't let go. Instead, he locked eyes with Paul. Both were top-tier alphas. Faced with such direct provocation, George's grassy pheromones heated up, turning bold and aggressive in response. Caught in the middle, my legs nearly gave out. My glands were pounding wildly. I almost fainted on the spot. Taking advantage of George's momentary distraction, I tore his arm off and put distance between us. "George, what the hell is wrong with you?" I touched the side of my neck where he brushed against me. It was scalding hot. George, seeing I'd shoved him away, rolled back to his desk in his chair and casually picked up a book. "Relax, babe. It was just a joke, just a little hug. Shut up." Paul's lips were drawn into a tight line, his jaw clenched like a blade. He didn't even follow his usual routine of setting down his bag or changing clothes. Still wearing his backpack, he swept his cold gaze over us, turned silently, and slammed the door behind him with a bang. George clicked his tongue. What's his problem? Did someone piss in his cereal? Or is he mad because I had my arms around you? I ran a hand through my hair, agitated. "You keep your hands to yourself. Stay away from me." George looked aggrieved. "Fine, baby, don't call me that." I couldn't stay in that dorm a second longer. I threw on a t-shirt, grabbed my backpack, and bolted, walking beneath the tree-lined path toward the library. The evening breeze was cool, but I couldn't shake the discomfort left behind by the earlier pheromone clash or Paul's piercing, ice-cold stare. Asterisk, as I passed the grove, I spotted a delicate-looking boy blocking Paul's path. Holding a bouquet of flowers, a thick, sweet jasmine omega pheromone clung to the boy. "Senior Paul, I've admired you for a long time. Please, would you accept this?" Paul stood straight, back to me. "I'm sorry," he said. "I don't like Omegas, and I have no plans to date during college. Please move." The boy looked crushed by the blunt rejection. He muttered a quiet sorry, clutched his flowers, and ran off. A lingering hint of jasmine scent hung in the air. I turned to sneak away quietly, Cameron. But he called out anyway. I stopped, turning reluctantly. What? He walked over, cedarwood pheromones trailing with the chill that hadn't yet faded. He looked straight into my eyes and without preamble, demanded, "What's going on between you and George? Just roommates. What else could it be?" I looked away, answering casually, "Just roommates." He let out a scoffing laugh, stepping closer. "Cameron, you're really something. First you kissed me outside the classroom. Now you're half naked in the dorm cuddling with George. Is this what all betas are like? Just throwing themselves around. I'm really something. F*CKU. That was all George is doing. And who the hell gave you the right to question me like that? What you saw isn't the whole story." I tried to explain, but halfway through, I realized I didn't owe him anything. He was just joking around. Joking? His eyes turned even colder. He grabbed my chin and forced me to look at him. His thumb rubbed hard across the exact spot George had touched. Dirty. It stung a lot. "Paul, let go. That hurts." I tried to pry his hand off, but he only squeezed tighter. Something was seriously off. He wasn't his usual calm and collected self. This was possessive, even violent. He stared at me, voice low and strained. "Is it because he's exceptional? First place in the National Physics Olympiad, direct admission. An alpha. Is that why you think he's better than me?" What? I was completely confused. What the hell does this have to do with George being good at anything? What are you even talking about? He leaned in, nose to nose, his pheromones pressing down on me like a weight. "I'll surpass him. In every way, in all ways. You can only be mine." He kissed me, then let go of my chin and turned to leave with wide strides, leaving me standing there, alone. My cheek burned where he'd touched it. My heart was a mess. That guy. Could it be he actually likes me? I touched my chin, kissed, and rubbed raw and bit my lip. Unbelievable, that love-brained alpha. Paul's words echoed in my head for days. What did he mean? Was it a territorial thing between rivals? Or something else? I didn't dare think too hard, because something more urgent was happening. My inhibitors seemed to be failing. Wednesday afternoon, last class of the day. I sat in the back row, trying hard to concentrate, but my body felt wrong. The glands on the back of my neck were starting to heat up. I discreetly sprayed some inhibitor, but the relief didn't last long. A stronger wave of heat surged right after. No, this wasn't right. My heat cycle shouldn't be for another month. Why now? And why so intense? I clutched my phone, staring at the red mark date on the calendar. 2 weeks until my projected heat, but I might not last that long. After years of using high-strength inhibitors, my cycle had already become erratic, and with all the recent pheromone exposure from Paul, it had probably triggered an early heat. To make things worse, I only had a regular strength spray on me, useless against this kind of flare-up. I gritted my teeth, forcing myself to sit upright. Just 20 more minutes until class ends. Then I could run back to the dorm and inject the strong stuff. Just hold on, just a little longer. I clenched my fist, nails digging into my palms, trying to stay conscious through the pain. But my body's natural instincts were only growing stronger. That sweet, fruity omega pheromone began to seep uncontrollably from my glands. It was faint, but to sharp-nosed alphas, it was more than enough. Several alpha classmates in front of me began glancing back repeatedly. I lowered my head, burying my face in my arms, pretending to rest, desperately trying to suppress the pheromone leak, but it was no use. The harder I tried to suppress it, the stronger the omega instinct surged back, screaming to be marked, to be soothed. Cold sweat beaded on my forehead. My breathing turned rapid and shaky. "Cameron, are you okay?" a nearby beta whispered in concern. "I am fine. Probably just low blood sugar. Do you want to go to the infirmary?" "No. I'm good." I waved a trembling hand, trying to hold it together. Finally, the bell rang. The professor had barely said, "Class dismissed," when I shot to my feet, grabbed my bag, and bolted out of the room. "Cameron," someone called after me. I couldn't hear who it was, and I didn't care. I had to get back to the dorm. Now, immediately, the 10-minute walk from the lecture hall to the dorm felt like an eternity. Students filled the campus walkways, alpha pheromones swirling all around me, bombarding my senses. Every passing alpha triggered both instinctive fear and an equally instinctive urge to draw closer. My legs were weak, my steps dragging, the glands on the back of my neck burned like fire, and the sweet scent of fruit and flowers clung to me more thickly, starting to draw attention. "Hey, are you okay?" A stranger, a male alpha, stopped and looked at me with concern. His pheromones carried a light sandalwood scent, mild and gentle, but to me right now, it was like gasoline on fire. My body trembled violently, leaning involuntarily toward him. "I'm fine," I whispered. "You don't look fine," he frowned, reaching toward me. "Do you need help?" Don't touch me. I shoved him hard, but ended up collapsing to the ground. The scene drew even more attention. Several other alphas passing by slowed down, eyes curious. An omega in preheat releases pheromones that are irresistible to alphas, even though I'd been pretending all along. I was now visibly losing control, and the more sensitive alphas had already picked up on it. I think he's an omega. Someone whispered. No way. Cameron's a beta, isn't he? But that scent. The murmurs grew louder. My scalp tingled. I forced myself up, desperate to leave, but my legs gave out again. I stumbled on my first step. Careful, the Sandalwood Alpha reached out again. But this time, his expression had changed. What began as simple concern now twisted into something else. Alpha instinct. Possessiveness. Let me walk you back to your dorm, he said. No. I gritted my teeth, trying to walk around him. But he stepped to the side and blocked my way. To more alphas closed in, flanking me. They formed a loose circle, trapping me in the middle. Don't be nervous, said one with a buzz cut. Flashing a smile, we just want to help. His pheromones were sharp, peppery, aggressive. The other one reeked of musky cologne, intense and invasive. 3 different alpha pheromones pressed in from every side. My mind went blank. My body trembled uncontrollably. My knees buckled and I collapsed again. Look. He can't even stand, the buzz-cut alpha said. He took a step closer, reaching out to touch my face. Don't touch me. Come on, let's get you somewhere safe. The Sandalwood Alpha stepped forward again, this time wrapping an arm around my shoulder. His hand was hot through the fabric of my shirt, searing. I tried to push him away, but my arms were limp and useless. Let go of him. A cold voice cut through the noise like a blade. That voice. I snapped my head up. Paul stood just a few steps away, his face dark and terrifying. He must have just come from training. He was still in his sportswear, bangs damp with sweat. His cedarwood pheromones exploded outward like a shockwave. All 3 alphas flinched. The peppery one backed up instantly. The musky one tried to fight back, releasing a wave of his own pheromones, but under Paul's dominance, he didn't stand a chance. Only the Sandalwood Alpha remained standing. But even he loosened his grip on my shoulder, without realizing it. Paul, he said, clearly recognizing him. His voice held a note of wariness. Is this yours? He's mine, Paul cut in, voice like steel. Let go. The 3 alphas exchanged glances. None of them wanted to go up against Paul directly. Everyone knew he was one of the most dominant alphas at the academy, not someone you messed with. But the pheromones I was leaking in heat made them hesitate. Walking away wouldn't be easy. We just saw he wasn't well. Thought we'd help. The Sandalwood Alpha tried to explain. No need. Paul stepped forward. Leave. That last word was spoken softly, but the threat behind it made all 3 of them shudder. Stay. And things would get ugly. Sorry. The Sandalwood Alpha backed away first. We're leaving. The other 2 quickly followed and disappeared into the dispersing crowd. Onlookers, sensing the danger in Paul's cold stare, scattered in every direction in seconds. The path was clear. Just me and him. I gasped for breath. Drenched in cold sweat, Paul walked over, crouched in front of me, meeting my eyes. Cameron, you? He stopped mid-sentence, because the fruity sweet scent of my omega pheromones was now thick in the air, mixing with his cedar and intimate, electrifying blend. His Adam's apple bobbed. His breathing grew heavier. Your pheromone. You're an omega? I nodded. It was over. Everything was over. My biggest secret was now exposed right in front of the one person I most didn't want to know. I thought he'd be shocked, angry, that he'd demand to know why I lied. But he didn't say a word. Instead, after a few seconds of silence, he pulled off his jacket and draped it over my shoulders. It was saturated with a scent strong, dominant cedar, enveloping me instantly to an omega in heat. The presence of alpha pheromones was both soothing and stimulating. I let out a helpless moan, my body going limp again. Paul caught me, arms sliding beneath me. Put me down. Don't move, he murmured, voice low. His grip tightened. In your state, you can't walk. He was right. I could barely stay conscious, let alone stand. Paul lifted me into his arms and strode toward the dorms. Along the way, dozens of students turned their heads in surprise, but I didn't care. I buried my face against his chest, breathing in the thick cedar scent clinging to his jacket. That scent calmed me, yet also drove me mad. I trembled in his arms, my neck aching, glands pulsing, desperate for touch, for a mark. I leaned up and kissed his neck gently. Paul, I'm here, he whispered, quickening his pace. We reached the dorm building soon after, thankfully. It was a quiet time. Most people were still in class or at the library. The hallways were empty. He carried me up to the 3rd floor and stopped outside our dorm. George wasn't there. Martin wasn't either. Still holding me in one arm, Paul reached into his pocket for the keys. The door opened. He gently placed me on my bed, then turned around and locked the door. "Where's your inhibitor?" he asked. "Top drawer, left side of the desk," I pointed weakly. Paul strode over, pulled the drawer open, and quickly found the high-grade suppressant and a syringe. He returned to the bed. "Can you do it yourself?" I shook my head. My hands were trembling so badly I couldn't even grip the syringe. He hesitated for a moment, then opened the packaging and drew the medication with practiced precision. Turn around. I obediently rolled over, turning my back to him and exposing my nape for an omega. This gesture meant total trust, absolute submission, but I had no energy left to care. The pain of heat left me with no choice but to rely on him. His hand gently touched the back of my neck. His fingers were cool, and the moment they brushed my feverish skin, I shivered. "Relax," he said beside my ear, his voice low and restrained. "This might sting a bit." I bit down on my lip and nodded. The needle pricked my skin with a faint sting. The cold medicine flowed into my body. The suppressant worked almost instantly. The burning, restless haze faded rapidly. My pheromones stopped spiraling out of control. I let out a long breath and collapsed into the bed, completely spent. Paul removed the needle and pressed a cotton swab gently to the injection site. His movements were light, careful, all done. I didn't look back. I didn't dare to. I didn't know how to face him, after lying to him for so long, competing against him under a false identity. Now, in the most humiliating way, my biggest secret had been exposed. "I'm sorry, Paul." "Sorry for what?" "For lying. I'm not a beta." Silence. So long I thought he wasn't going to respond. The mattress shifted. He sat down beside me. "I know," he said softly. I turned around, in shock, staring at him. "You knew?" He nodded, eyes complex. "I've suspected since high school." "Then why? Why didn't I call you out?" He gave a wry smile. "Because you were trying so hard to hide it. Because you believed only by doing so could we compete on equal ground." He reached out and brushed away the sweat-soaked bangs from my forehead. "Cameron, you never needed to pretend. Whether you're an alpha, beta, or omega, you've always been the rival I cared about most." He paused. "And also, the person I care about most." My heart completely lost its rhythm. "Paul, do you even know what you're saying?" "I do." He met my eyes. "Cameron, I like you. I've liked you for a long time. The same childhood rival who always overshadowed me, more brilliant, more perfect. The person I hated and noticed more than anyone he liked me. Are you insane? I'm Cameron. And we're rivals." I stammered. He chuckled, low in his throat. "And rivals can't fall in love. Or is it because I'm an alpha that you don't trust my feelings?" "No, it's not that." I shook my head quickly. "It's just all so sudden," he murmured. I thought I'd made it obvious. Now that I looked back, it all made sense. The strange attention in high school, the obsessive decision to follow me to the same university, the moments of possessiveness that kept spiraling out of control. So it wasn't just rivalry, but because I like you, I noticed you. Because I like you, I wanted to be near you. Because I like you, I couldn't stand anyone else touching you, Cameron," he said softly, cupping my cheek. "I know this feels sudden. You can reject me. That's okay. But I want you to know you never have to hide in front of me. Beta or omega, none of that matters. You're you, and I love you for who you are: stubborn, proud, and endlessly competitive." My eyes stung, not from sadness, not from shame, but from relief. After all these years of pretending, hiding, and pushing forward alone, here, in front of him, I could finally let go. "Paul," my voice trembled. I think he blinked. "You think what?" "I think I might have liked you too, for a while now." Tears welled and spilled over. "I don't know when it started, maybe high school, maybe even earlier. But by the time I noticed, my eyes were already following you." He smiled and reached up to wipe my tears. "Really?" I nodded. "Why else do you think I insisted on going to the same university as you? Why I was always so obsessed with you? Why I didn't finish?" Paul kissed me. I closed my eyes, wrapped my arms around his neck, and kissed him back. This kiss was gentle, lingering. No pheromones clashing, no instinctual rush, just two people, baring their hearts until click. The sound of a key turning in the lock. A second later, the dorm door swung open. George and Martin stood frozen at the entrance. George dropped his bubble tea. It exploded across the floor. Martin stood there, mouth wide open, like his entire worldview had just shattered. I pushed Paul away, my face hot enough to fry an egg. Paul, on the other hand, was perfectly calm. He looked at the two of them. "You're back." George stared at me, then pointed at Paul, completely flabbergasted. You guys, as you can see," Paul said smoothly, pulling me into his arms. "I'm kissing my omega." "What the hell?" George yelled, storming over. "So, All that hostility earlier was because I flirted with your amiga. What else did you think? Paul raised an eyebrow. But you always said you didn't like omegas. George jabbed his finger at Paul, nearly shaking with rage. That's because I only like this one. The rest don't matter. George stared at us. His face cycled through shock, outrage, and finally, crushing defeat. I've lost, he muttered. Then spun around and dove into Martin's arms, wailing, Martin. I've been dumped before I even started. Wah, Martin patted his back with an exasperated look. When were you even dating? Can't I have a secret crush? George sobbed harder. Cameron's so good-looking and cute. I've liked him for ages. And now he turns out to be Paul's. I can't take it, just let me die. Enough, enough. They haven't even made it public yet. And here you are acting like the lead in some tragic drama. George pointed at me and Paul. Our fingers interlocked by the bed. Public. You need a press conference for this. Look at Paul's eyes. He's obsessed. I knew it since freshman year. He always looked at Cameron weird. Turns out he was just waiting for the right moment to pounce. That night, for the first time ever, the four of us finally managed to go out and eat together. George looked like a wilted cabbage, sulking beside Martin. It took Martin quite a while to coax him into picking up his chopsticks again. So, you two had feelings for each other since high school. Martin couldn't hold back his gossip instinct. Yeah. Paul nodded and casually placed a piece of rib in my bowl. And it took you this long to finally confess. Someone got addicted to pretending to be a beta, Paul said, glancing sideways at me. I figured if I said it too early, he'd buy a standing room ticket and flee the galaxy overnight. You're the one who'd flee. I kicked him under the table. He chuckled and caught my ankle, giving it a gentle squeeze. The gesture was way to intimate. My face flushed again. George immediately leaned into Martin's shoulder. See, look at them, Martin. Look at that. Martin pushed his head away, face full of disdain. Mind your own plate. The meal ended in a blur of George's whining and Paul and I sabotaging each other. On the way back to the dorm, Paul held my hand the entire time. Our fingers were tightly intertwined. Paul, I murmured, this still feels like a dream. Then let's make it a dream that lasts forever. He stopped walking and turned to face me. I'll always be by your side whether you want to crush me or beat me. I'll be right there. What if one day I really beat you? Then I'll accept it, he said, smiling. If I lose to you, I'll gladly take it. I tugged his collar and kissed him on the lips. Deal, no backing out, never, he said, deepening the kiss as he pulled me in. By the end of the kiss, we were both a little breathless. He wrapped his arms around my waist and held me close, resting his chin on top of my head. We stood there in a quiet embrace. Now then, Cameron baby, he murmured. Are you coming to my bed tonight, or should I go to yours? In your dreams, we sleep separately. Why run? I never said we'd do anything. Back at the dorm, I showered, climbed onto my bed, drew the curtain, and wrapped myself tightly in the blanket. Outside, I heard the sounds of Paul brushing his teeth, then climbing into his own bed. The lights went out, darkness. I had no idea how much time passed. Just when I thought he'd fallen asleep, my phone screen lit up. It was Paul, still awake. I stared at those 3 words, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Yeah, he replied instantly. I can't sleep. I miss you. Stop that. I mean it, baby. I just want to hold you. I won't do anything, promise. I stared at the messages, my heart pounding like mad. I bit my lip, wrestling with myself for several long minutes. Eventually, I lifted a corner of the curtain and peeked out, across from me. Paul also drew his curtain back, watching me quietly. Then come here, he jumped out of bed with practiced ease and climbed into mine. The single bed instantly felt crowded. His cedar scent spilled into the space as he lay beside me, naturally slipping an arm around my waist and pulling me close. You promised no funny business. I promised, he said, planting a soft kiss on my forehead. Good night, baby, pressed against his chest, wrapped in his thick scent. I felt hot all over. Can you tone down your pheromones? It's too much. I feel dizzy. His arm around my waist tightened, cedarwood trailing across my skin like smoke. Baby, do you know that saying stuff like that to an alpha is the same as lighting a match? My face burned as I shrank into the blanket. I'm being literal. It's too thick. I'm actually dizzy. You're so stubborn, he laughed softly, his nose brushing my nape. Your pheromones are leaking too, sweet as hell, it's driving me crazy. His lips trailed down to my neck, hot and lingering. Cameron, you wanted to, don't you? Being held by him, surrounded by that dominant yet tender scent. My body's reactions were impossible to hide. He pulled me into a tighter embrace, and his warm lips pressed to the back of my neck. Don't be afraid, just a temporary mark. Let me mark you, Cameron. The moment his teeth scraped across my gland, I stiffened, my fingers clutching his shirt tightly. His lips and tongue soothed the sensitive skin over and over until it fully relaxed. Until my body melted completely into his arms, then came the slight sting. His canines pierced my skin. His cedarwood pheromones, now several times stronger, surged into my bloodstream. MMH. I let out a muffled moan. The air around us became saturated with scented cedar, merging seamlessly with my fruit's wheat pheromones, forming something new, intimate, inseparable. Only after a long time did he finally loosen his grip and trail soft kisses down my neck. Now, he murmured, turning me to face him and brushing my lips with his, my scent is all over you. You can't run anymore, baby. I lay panting against his chest, my whole body limp and boneless. I couldn't even lift a finger. He stroked the back of my neck, still damp and slightly swollen where he'd bitten me. Does it hurt? What do you think? It hurt, but it also felt good. That overwhelming feeling of being claimed, it was terrifyingly real and addicting. You're mine now. And from now on. He didn't finish, but his fingers pressed meaningfully against my waist. I knew what he meant. The flush that had just faded came rushing back. Paul, restrain yourself. This is still a dorm. They won't come back tonight. Then I felt something hard press against my lower stomach. You, baby. I may have overestimated my self-control, didn't you say? You just hold me. I am holding you. But baby, your pheromones keep teasing me. He ground his hips gently against me, making me gasp. The air was thick with our blended scents, sweet, heady, impossible to ignore. Then maybe. I was completely incoherent. Next time, we'll get a bigger bed. The next morning, I woke up sore all over. Paul was already awake, propped on one elbow, watching me with an intent gaze. Awake, he leaned down and pecked my lips. Good morning, my Omega. Who's your? I muttered and buried my face in his chest. Last night, we really hadn't held back after all. We tossed and turned until deep into the night before finally falling asleep. George and Martin hadn't come back at all, giving us space to be completely unrestrained. I poked his collarbone. Hey, Paul, do you remember, back in high school, when I went to your place to scout the enemy, then ended up sleeping over? What about it? I grinned, barely holding in laughter. I discovered that someone slept incredibly soundly while hugging my foot. The tips of his ears flushed red, though he tried to stay calm. Did I? I don't remember, I drawled. So our dignified top scholar from a university was already plotting against me back then? Sneaking off in the middle of the night to cuddle his archenemy's foot, he slid a hand to my waist, eyes narrowing dangerously. Cameron, are you sure you want to dig up old debts this early in the morning while lying in my arms? He flipped us over in one smooth motion, caging me beneath him. Looks like you're still not tired enough. I was wrong. I instantly surrendered and changed the subject. You were so good at pretending back then. How did you lose control that one time outside the classroom? He was silent for a moment, then pressed a kiss to my gland. Because I'd held back for too long. I thought you were a beta. I thought I'd never have a chance in this lifetime. When you suddenly leaned in, my rationality just collapsed. Does it hurt? He asked softly, rubbing my lower back. What do you think? I shot him a glare. You were like a damn dog. He chuckled lowly and kissed the already scabbed temporary mark on my neck. My fault. I'll be gentler next time. I tried to kick him, only to wince in pain the moment I moved. Of course there will be a next time. From now on, every day. Every night, whenever you want. I don't want. Liar. Last night. Who was it that held onto me and cried, saying? I slapped a hand over his mouth. Mortified beyond words, the amusement in his eyes deepened. His tongue lightly brushed my palm. I yanked my hand back as if electrocuted. Paul. You what? He blinked innocently, then leaned closer. Baby, you're really cute when you're shy. The door suddenly opened. George stumbled in, hair a mess, dark circles under his eyes, steps unsteady. Seeing the two of us squeezed onto one bed, he froze for a second, then he covered his eyes and turned to flee, only to slam straight into Martin, who had just walked in behind him. What now? Martin asked. He staggered back, looked up and froze as well. Adjusting his glasses, he said carefully, you need us to step out for another 30 minutes. Paul was perfectly calm, not loosening his arm around me. No need. George peeked out from behind Martin. Why you? Last night? Exactly. What you think? Paul admitted without hesitation. Any problem? No. George shrank back, muttering, it's just kind of intense, my fragile little heart. Martin dragged him inside and shut the door. Enough drama. Go wash up. We still have class this morning. Blushing furiously, I scrambled off the bed, grabbed clean clothes from the wardrobe, and dashed into the bathroom. In the mirror, My neck and chest were littered with ambiguous red marks. I stared at my reflection, flushed cheeks, damp eyes, looking thoroughly well taken care of. This was unbearable to look at. When I came back out, Paul was already dressed. Standing by my desk with my inhibitor in hand, he said, shaking the box. You won't need it anymore. Then what about my sensitive periods? I asked. I've got you. He stepped closer, pulling me into his arms, nose brushing my nape. My pheromones work better than any inhibitor. He wasn't wrong. After a temporary mark, an alpha's pheromones could soothe an omega-sensitive period for quite some time. But that also meant my dependence on him would only deepen. What are you thinking about? He asked, noticing my distraction. I was wondering if one day I want to beat you in a competition. Would you deliberately go easy on me? If baby wants me to lose, I can consider holding back. No, I don't want you to lose on purpose. I want to beat you fair and square. He could conquer the whole world. I only needed to conquer him. I really was a genius, baby. You've already beaten me. George was brushing his teeth nearby, mouth full of foam, yet still butting in. Why does your relationship sound like signing a military pledge? Martin zipped up his bag. You wouldn't understand. That's called foreplay. George rinsed his mouth, realization dawning. Love and war. I get it. Paul and I exchanged a glance and laughed. Yes, love and war, from mortal enemies to lovers. We'd taken the long way around, but in the end, we still found each other. That morning's classes were in the Alpha Academy. When Paul and I walked into the classroom side by side, it caused a small stir, mostly because of the strong cedar scent clinging to me, and a very obvious temporary mark on my neck. Damn, Paul. You worked fast, a familiar alpha whistled. Impressive. You did hit it well. Only when the professor arrived did the chatter die down. Throughout the entire lecture, Paul held my hand under the desk, his thumb occasionally stroking the back of my hand. He listened intently, took meticulous notes, yet those small movements betrayed his thoughts. I couldn't help but smile. So, this was what being in love felt like. Doing serious things yet constantly distracted by the person beside you. After class, just as we stepped out of the building, someone stopped us. It was the Sandalwood-scented alpha from yesterday. The moment he saw our interlocked hands, his expression shifted, but he still greeted us politely. Paul, Cameron, sorry to bother you about what happened earlier. I was out of line. I didn't know you two were together. Paul subtly pulled me a little behind him. You know now. I do. The alpha gave a bitter smile. I wish you both happiness. Once he left, Paul finally relaxed his tense shoulders. Still jealous? I poked his waist. Yeah, he admitted it openly. Just thinking about him touching you makes me. He just helped steady me. I said, amused. Paul, are you always this possessive? Because you're mine. He turned and pressed me against the wall from inside out. From the tip of your hair to your toes, you belong to me. Childish. I rolled my eyes, though my heart melted into a puddle. I'm only childish with you. He kissed my forehead. Come on, let's get you something delicious. I want the spicy hot pot placed by the school gate. Done. Double beef slices, anything you want. It was another weekend, and we were back home for dinner. Both families sat around the same table. The atmosphere was delicate, so my mom cautiously opened her mouth. You two are together now. Paul held my hand under the table and nodded. Yes, Annie? We're together. My dad opened his mouth but couldn't get a word out for a long time. Paul's parents, on the other hand, were incredibly calm, almost too calm, like they had been waiting for this day forever. We've had our suspicions for a long time, his mom said with a smile. Ever since they were little. Paul's eyes never left Cameron. Mom, keep your voice down. What's there to be shy about? His dad patted his shoulder. If you like someone, go for it. That's the way we do things in the Rena family. My mom looked at me, then at Paul. Her eyes suddenly reddened. What's wrong, Mom? I panicked. Nothing. She wiped her eyes. It's just that our Cameron finally has someone who wants him. Moom. I groaned. Everyone at the table burst into laughter. That meal was incredibly warm. No comparisons, no pressure, just families. Sincerely joyful and supportive. After dinner, Paul and I stood on the balcony, gazing up at the stars. Remember the day we filled out college applications? Paul asked. I do. I leaned against his shoulder. You said I'd lose. Well, you lost. He turned to look at me, a smile tugging at his lips. You lost me, says who? I raised a brow. The game isn't over yet. What? Game? The game of life, I smiled. Let's see who admits defeat first. Paul chuckled and kissed my forehead. Then I surrender, he whispered. I gave up the moment I fell for you. I looked up at him, my heart soft as clouds. Let's call it a tie, I murmured. We both lost and both won. Paul didn't say anything, only held me tighter. The Stars above shimmered with a gentle light like a reflection of the way we felt inside. We'd come full circle, from enemies to lovers, from secrets to honesty. We'd taken the long way around to reach each other, but it was worth it, because he was Paul, and I was Cameron. We were once destined rivals. Now we were worthy opponents in love. And in this never-ending game of winning and losing, neither of us would ever truly surrender, because we still had a lifetime left to compete, to love, to grow old together, until the end of time. Yours truly, Cameron of the Universe.